They say a veteran's instinct never fades. Even when you've traded the battlefield for the quiet suburbs, the survival instincts honed in war don't just vanish. My name is Jack Riley. I served 2 tours overseas, saw things no man should ever see, and did things no man should ever have to do. When I returned home, I thought I'd left all of that behind. I thought I'd found peace with Amanda. We'd been married for 5 years, and by all accounts, we were the perfect couple. But perfect is a funny word. It's fragile, like glass, and all it takes is a single crack to shatter the illusion. At first, it was subtle. Amanda was always on her phone, giggling at texts she refused to share. She started staying out later, claiming work meetings and girls' nights. She smelled like cologne I didn't recognize. My gut screamed at me that something was wrong, but I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that after everything I'd been through, my home was the one place I could feel safe. But then came the nightmares. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, only to find her side of the bed empty. Work deadlines, she'd say when she finally returned home, hours after midnight. Don't wait up. The shadows in her eyes grew darker, and the distance between us widened. One night, I finally gave in to my suspicions. When Amanda left her phone unattended, I couldn't resist. My hands trembled as I unlocked it, scrolling through her messages. That's when I saw his name, Travis. The texts weren't vague. They were explicit, filled with promises, plans, and confessions. The worst part? Amanda didn't even bother to hide it. I sat there in the dark, staring at the glowing screen, feeling like my chest was about to implode. Betrayal is a wound you can't prepare for. It hits harder than any bullet. I had faced enemies in combat, but nothing had ever felt as personal as this. But I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I made a decision. I needed to know more about the man who thought he could steal my wife and my life. If war taught me anything, it's this. Never act on emotions alone. Gather intel, plan your attack, and when you strike, make it count. That night, as Amanda slept soundly beside me, unaware that her secrets were no longer safe, I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. The war inside me had been reignited, and this time the battlefield was my own home. The first thing I learned about Travis was that he was predictable. Men like him, arrogant, overconfident, think they're untouchable. A quick search of his name on social media told me everything I needed to know. Travis Langley, 32 years old, a self-proclaimed fitness guru with a local gym and a knack for showing off. His profile was littered with shirtless photos, motivational quotes, and videos of him barking orders at his clients like a wannabe drill sergeant. The man reeked of insecurity disguised as dominance. But what struck me the most was the comments section under one of his recent posts. A photo of him flexing in front of a mirror had a familiar name beneath it, Amanda. Her words made my stomach churn. Can't wait to see you again tonight. I clenched my jaw so tightly that it felt like my teeth might crack. So it wasn't just a fling, it was an ongoing affair. I needed to keep my head straight, though. Acting impulsively wouldn't fix anything. No, I needed to hit them where it hurt. The next day, while Amanda was at work, I made a trip to Travis's gym. It wasn't hard to find. It was plastered with posters of him in action. His name scrawled across the windows like he was some sort of local celebrity. I parked across the street and watched for hours. Clients came and went, most of them women, and Travis ate up the attention like a king holding court. He was all charm, smiles, and flashy moves. I wasn't impressed. I'd seen real strength, real discipline. This guy? He was a poser, a snake oil salesman with big muscles and a bigger ego. I noted his schedule, his patterns, and who he spent time with. By the end of the day, I knew more about Travis than I'd known about some of the men I'd served with. But my investigation didn't stop there. I needed leverage. I started digging into Amanda's emails, her bank statements, and her calendar. What I found was a mix of heartbreak and rage. There were dinners, hotel bookings, even receipts for gifts she'd bought him. Gifts. She couldn't even bother to buy me a birthday card last year, but she was showering him with expensive cologne and watches. It was hard not to confront her right then and there, but I kept my cool. Instead, I focused on the bigger picture. Travis and Amanda had no idea who they were dealing with. They thought I was some washed-up vet living in the past. What they didn't know was that I hadn't just survived war. I'd thrived in it. That night, I sat in the garage, staring at an old trunk filled with mementos from my service. Medals, photos, and, tucked beneath it all, a knife I hadn't touched in years. The weight of it in my hand felt both familiar and foreign. It was a reminder of who I used to be, and who I could be again if necessary. I didn't sleep much that night. Instead, I planned. Every move, every word, every detail had to be perfect. I wasn't just going to confront them, I was going to make them regret every choice that led to this moment. The next morning, as Amanda kissed me goodbye with that fake smile of hers, I felt nothing but cold resolve. She thought I was clueless, weak, disposable. Travis thought the same. They were both wrong. It didn't take long to peel back the shiny veneer of Travis Langley. On the surface, he was every bit the image he projected. Tall, muscular, with a blindingly white smile that screamed confidence. But behind the protein shakes and motivational speeches was a man who built his entire life on lies. A few calls to some old friends in law enforcement painted a clearer picture. Travis had a history, nothing major yet, but enough to give me an edge. A DUI in his early 20s, a dismissed harassment complaint from a former client, and a mountain of unpaid debts. The man lived on credit, gambling his reputation on his ability to charm people into believing he was something special. But like all con men, he had weaknesses. His gym was barely staying afloat. Most of his income came from personal training sessions, and judging by the comments I overheard in the parking lot, his charm was starting to wear thin. Clients complained about his arrogance, about his tendency to flirt too much and focus too little. I filed that information away, every little detail another weapon in my arsenal. But what I uncovered next was the most damning of all. Travis wasn't just having an affair with Amanda. He had a history of preying on married women. It was his thing. He'd target women who were unhappy in their marriages, pump them full of compliments and attention, and reel them in. It was a game to him, a sick, twisted game. Amanda wasn't special to him. She was just another trophy, another notch on his belt. That realization hit me harder than I expected. For all her flaws, for all her betrayal, I'd thought she meant something to him. That maybe, just maybe, this wasn't as shallow as it seemed. But Travis didn't care about Amanda. He didn't care about anyone but himself. I thought about confronting him then, walking into his gym and wiping that smug grin off his face. But I wasn't ready. Not yet. Confrontation was easy. Revenge required patience. So I watched. I learned his schedule, his habits, his patterns. I followed him to his favorite bar, where he spent his evenings drinking overpriced whiskey and flirting with bartenders. I memorized the routes he took to and from the gym. I even learned where he lived. A small, overpriced apartment downtown, the kind of place someone rents to feel important. The more I learned about him, the more I realized how fragile he was. Travis was all show, no substance. He relied on his image to get what he wanted, but without it, he was nothing. By the end of the week, I had enough information to destroy him. But I wasn't just after him. Amanda had to face the consequences too. That night, I sat in my truck outside Travis's apartment, watching as he stumbled out of an Uber, clearly drunk. He didn't even notice me parked a few feet away. I watched as he fumbled with his keys, muttering to himself, before finally disappearing inside. I could have ended it right there. I could have followed him inside and finished what he'd started when he decided to destroy my life. But I didn't, because Travis wasn't just going to lose a fight, he was going to lose everything. As I drove home, I felt a sense of clarity. This wasn't just about Amanda or Travis. This was about justice, about making sure neither of them ever did this to anyone else again. The war had officially begun, and I wasn't planning on losing. It happened on a Tuesday night. I remember it vividly because it was one of those rare evenings where the house was completely quiet. Amanda was still at work, or at least that's what she said. I was sitting at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee, when I heard the knock. It wasn't the kind of knock you get from a neighbor dropping by to borrow sugar. No, this was loud, aggressive, commanding. Whoever was on the other side of that door wanted to make a statement. I opened it to find Travis standing there. He wasn't in gym gear this time. He'd gone out of his way to look intimidating. A leather jacket, jeans that were almost too tight, and that cocky smirk plastered across his face. He was taller than I'd expected, broad-shouldered, and confident in a way only someone truly ignorant could be. Jack, right? His voice was dripping with smugness, like he'd already won. We need to talk. I didn't move from the doorway. About what? He scoffed, stepping closer, as if trying to intimidate me with his size. Look, man, I'm just here to make this easier for everyone. Amanda doesn't want to be here anymore. She doesn't want to be with you. I didn't react. That seemed to throw him off, but he recovered quickly, leaning against the doorframe like he owned the place. You don't have to make this hard, Jack. Pack your things, move on. Hell, I even brought you a suitcase. He gestured to a cheap duffel bag slung over his shoulder. I looked at the bag, then back at him. My heart was pounding, but not out of fear. It was the kind of rush I used to feel before a mission, the calm before the storm. Is that so? I asked, my voice steady. Travis mistook my composure for weakness. He took another step closer, now fully inside my home. Yeah, that's so. Amanda deserves someone who can give her what she wants. Someone who can handle her. And let's face it, old man, you're not that guy. Old man. I almost laughed. He had no idea who he was dealing with. Let me get this straight, I said, folding my arms. You came into my house, uninvited, to tell me to leave my wife, so you can take over? Travis grinned, clearly pleased with himself. Exactly. Glad we're on the same page. That's when I stepped closer, closing the distance between us. His grin faltered just slightly as he realized I wasn't backing down. You know, I said quietly, you should have done your homework before coming here. You'd have realized I don't take orders from anyone, especially not a wannabe alpha like you. The smirk disappeared entirely now. What's that supposed to mean? It means, I said, stepping even closer. You picked the wrong house. And the wrong man. Before he could respond, I moved. Quick, precise, and deliberate. In a second, I had him pinned against the wall, his arms immobilized. His cocky demeanor evaporated, replaced by confusion and panic. Here's the thing, Travis, I said, my voice low but firm. You don't get to walk into my life and tell me what to do. You don't get to take what's mine. And you sure as hell don't get to act like you're the better man. He struggled, but I held him in place, the years of training and combat experience kicking in effortlessly. His strength meant nothing when he didn't know how to use it. Let me go, man, he stammered, his voice shaking now. I leaned in, my face inches from his. You came here to scare me, but now you're the one who's scared, aren't you? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. His wide eyes and trembling hands said it all. I released him, and he stumbled backward, gasping for air. Get out, I said, my tone sharp as a knife. And if you ever come near me or my house again, you won't walk away so easily. Travis scrambled for the door, his arrogance replaced by humiliation. He didn't even look back as he left, the duffel bag forgotten on the floor. I stood there for a moment, my hands clenched into fists. It wasn't over, not by a long shot. This was just the first battle. But for the first time in weeks, I felt like I was in control again. When Amanda came home later that night, she found me sitting in the same spot at the kitchen table. She didn't ask why the door was slightly ajar or why there was a duffel bag near the entrance. And I didn't offer any explanations. Let her wonder. Let her feel the shift in the air. The war was just beginning. The morning after Travis's visit, Amanda acted like nothing was wrong. She greeted me with the same forced smile she'd been wearing for months, kissed me on the cheek, and poured herself a cup of coffee. It was all so painfully normal that I felt like screaming. How could she act so calm, so collected, when everything was falling apart? But I didn't let it show. I smiled back, played my part, and watched her carefully. Every move she made, every word she spoke. It was all data, all pieces of the puzzle I was determined to solve. After she left for work, I began phase 2 of my plan. Travis might have thought he'd escaped unscathed, but I wasn't done with him. Not even close. I started by visiting his gym. This time, I didn't just observe from the parking lot, I went inside. The place reeked of sweat and desperation, with loud music blaring from the speakers and mirrors covering every wall. Travis wasn't there yet, but his employees were. I struck up casual conversations with a few of them, pretending to be interested in signing up for a membership. It didn't take long for the cracks to show. One of the trainers, a young guy named Dylan, mentioned how Travis had been cutting corners, skipping maintenance on the equipment, shorting employees on paychecks, and even pocketing some of the profits from group sessions. "Guy thinks he's untouchable," Dylan said, shaking his head. "One of these days, it's gonna catch up to him." I smiled, nodding along. If only he knew how close that day was. That evening, I tailed Travis again. This time, he didn't go to the bar. He went to a cheap motel on the outskirts of town. I parked a safe distance away and waited. 15 minutes later, Amanda's car pulled into the lot. My jaw tightened as I watched her step out, looking around nervously before heading inside. I didn't follow them. Not yet. Confronting them here wouldn't accomplish anything. I needed more than just my word against theirs. I needed proof. Over the next week, I set up cameras around the house. Hidden ones, small enough to avoid detection but powerful enough to capture everything. I placed one in the living room, another in the kitchen, and one in the bedroom. It felt invasive, wrong even, but I reminded myself that this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about exposing the truth. And the truth came faster than I expected. 2 nights later, while Amanda was working late, I sat in the darkened living room, watching the live feed from the camera I'd hidden near the front door. Sure enough, just after midnight, Travis showed up. Amanda greeted him like a lover, wrapping her arms around his neck and kissing him deeply. The rage I felt in that moment was indescribable. But I stayed put, forcing myself to watch as they laughed, flirted, and disappeared upstairs. The betrayal burned in my chest like a fire I couldn't extinguish, but I stayed focused. By the time they left, I had everything I needed. Clear video evidence of their affair. The next morning, Amanda was unusually cheerful. She hummed as she made breakfast, oblivious to the storm brewing just beneath the surface. I sat across from her, pretending to read the newspaper, and asked casually, "How was work last night?" She didn't miss a beat. "Busy," she replied. "We had a late meeting, but we got a lot done." The lie rolled off her tongue so effortlessly that it made me sick. I wanted to confront her right then, to throw the evidence in her face and demand answers. But I held back. This wasn't the right time. Not yet. Instead, I spent the day preparing. I printed out screenshots of the messages I'd found on her phone, along with stills from the footage I'd recorded. I organized everything into a neat little folder, labeling it evidence. That evening, as Amanda sat on the couch scrolling through her phone, I placed the folder on the coffee table in front of her. She looked up, confused. "What's this?" she asked, reaching for it. "Open it," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. Her hands trembled as she flipped through the pages. The color drained from her face, her eyes widening with every passing second. "Jack, she began, but I cut her off. "Don't," I said sharply. "Don't insult me by trying to lie your way out of this. I know everything, Amanda. Everything." She sat there in stunned silence, clutching the folder like it was a grenade about to go off. "Do you love him?" I asked, my voice low but firm. She didn't answer right away. Her hesitation told me all I needed to know. I don't know," she stammered finally. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut, but I refused to let her see the pain. "You've made your choice," I said, standing up. "Now it's my turn." Without another word, I walked out of the room, leaving her to sit there with the weight of her betrayal. She didn't follow me, and that was fine, because the next part of my plan didn't involve her at all. The morning after Amanda found the folder, she was quiet. Too quiet. Normally, she'd fill the space with empty small talk, her phone glued to her hand as she scrolled through social media. But now, she sat at the kitchen table, staring at her coffee like it held the answers to all her problems. I didn't say a word to her. I didn't need to. The silence was louder than any argument we could have had. I left the house early that day, telling her I had errands to run. In reality, I was on my way to Travis's gym. It was time to take the fight to him. When I arrived, the place was buzzing with activity. Women in yoga pants and tank tops crowded the floor, while a few men grunted and groaned in the weightlifting section. And there, in the center of it all, was Travis. He was barking orders at a group of women doing squats, his chest puffed out like a peacock. I watched him for a moment, noting the way he strutted around like he owned the place. He had no idea I was there, no idea what was about to happen. I waited until he was alone, leaning against the front desk and sipping a protein shake. Then I walked up to him. "Travis," I said, my voice calm but firm. He turned, surprised to see me. For a moment, his expression wavered, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. But then he recovered, plastering on that smug grin of his. Well, if it isn't Jack," he said, leaning casually against the counter. "What brings you here? Looking to get in shape?" I ignored his attempt at humor. "We need to talk. Now." His grin faltered slightly, but he didn't back down. "I'm kind of busy right now, man. Maybe later." "No," I said, stepping closer. "We're doing this now." The authority in my voice must have caught him off guard because he straightened up, glancing around nervously. "All right," he said, gesturing toward his office in the back. "Let's talk." The office was small and cluttered, with papers and empty energy drink cans scattered across the desk. Travis closed the door behind us, then turned to face me. "What's this about?" he asked, feigning ignorance. I didn't bother with pleasantries. I pulled out my phone and opened the video footage I'd taken of him and Amanda in my house. I pressed play and held it up for him to see. His face turned pale as the video played, his smirk disappearing completely. "Where the hell did you get that?" he demanded, his voice rising. "I have my ways," I said, my tone icy. "And this is just the beginning. I know about the others, Travis. The women you've preyed on, the lives you've ruined. You think you're untouchable, but you're not. Not anymore." He tried to compose himself, crossing his arms and leaning back against the desk. "So what? You came here to threaten me? To scare me? Good luck with that, old man." I took a step closer, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "This isn't a threat, Travis. It's a promise. You've made a habit of ruining people's lives. But now it's your turn. I have enough evidence to destroy your reputation, your business, and whatever pathetic excuse for a life you've built for yourself." He opened his mouth to respond, but I cut him off. "And don't even think about coming after me or Amanda again. Because if you do, I'll make sure everyone in this town knows exactly who you are and what you've done." For the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes. He knew I wasn't bluffing. I turned and walked out of the office, leaving him standing there in stunned silence. The tension in the air was palpable as I stepped back into the gym, but I didn't look back. As I drove home, I felt a sense of satisfaction. The first domino had fallen, but the game wasn't over yet. Travis and Amanda had destroyed my trust, my marriage, and my sense of security. Now it was my turn to destroy theirs. When I got home, Amanda was in the living room, pacing back and forth with her phone in hand. She looked up the moment I walked in, her eyes wide and frantic. "Jack," she began, her voice trembling. "We need to talk." I didn't say anything. I just walked past her into the kitchen, setting my keys down on the counter. She followed me, desperation oozing from every step. "Please just listen," she said, her voice breaking. "I know you're angry, and I know I screwed up, but we can fix this. We can." "Stop," I said, cutting her off. My voice was cold, detached. "I don't want to hear your excuses, Amanda." Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. For once, she didn't seem to know what to say. I turned to face her, leaning against the counter. "Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? How it feels to know that the person you trusted most in the world has been lying to your face?" She flinched at my words, tears welling up in her eyes. "I never meant to hurt you," she whispered. I laughed bitterly. "You never meant to hurt me? Amanda, you've been sneaking around behind my back for months. Do you honestly expect me to believe that?" She wiped at her tears, shaking her head. "I made a mistake, Jack. Terrible, awful mistake. But I still love you." "Love?" I said, my voice rising. "Don't you dare use that word with me. Love doesn't look like this, Amanda. Love doesn't involve lies and betrayal." She broke down then, sinking into one of the kitchen chairs and burying her face in her hands. I watched her for a moment, torn between anger and exhaustion. "I need you to tell me the truth," I said finally. "All of it. No more lies, no more half-truths. I want to know everything." She looked up at me, her face red and streaked with tears. "It started a few months ago," she admitted. "I don't even know how it happened. I was at the gym, and Travis, he was just so confident, so—" "Spare me the details," I snapped. "I don't need to know how charming he was or how he swept you off your feet. I want to know why. Why him? Why now?" She hesitated, fumbling for an answer. I felt invisible, Jack. Like you didn't see me anymore. You were always so focused on work, on everything but us. And Travis. He made me feel wanted. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had to grip the edge of the counter to steady myself. "So this is my fault?" I said, my voice low and dangerous. "You cheated because I didn't pay you enough attention?" "No," she said quickly, shaking her head. "That's not what I mean. I'm not blaming you. I felt lost, and he was there." I stared at her, trying to make sense of what she was saying. Part of me wanted to scream at her, to lash out and let all the anger and hurt spill out. But another part of me just felt empty. "I trusted you," I said quietly. "I gave you everything, Amanda. And this is how you repay me." She didn't answer. She just sat there, her shoulders shaking as she sobbed. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The silence was suffocating, filled with all the things we couldn't say. Finally, I straightened up, taking a deep breath. "I need some air," I said, grabbing my jacket. "Jack, please," she begged, standing up and reaching for me. "Don't leave. We can fix this. I'll do whatever it takes." I pulled away from her, shaking my head. "I don't know if there's anything left to fix, Amanda." With that, I walked out the door, leaving her standing there in the middle of the kitchen. As I stepped into the cool evening air, I felt a strange sense of relief. The truth was out now, raw and ugly, but at least it was out. The question was, what would I do with it? The evening air was crisp, the kind that bites at your skin and wakes you up. I walked without a destination in mind, my hands shoved deep into my jacket pockets. Amanda's words echoed in my head, each one a dagger twisting deeper into my chest. I felt invisible. He made me feel wanted. Excuses, rationalizations, but they still cut. I found myself at the edge of the park, a place I used to visit to clear my head after long days. Tonight, the park felt different, colder, darker. The streetlights cast long, eerie shadows across the empty paths. I sat on a bench and stared at the ground, my mind racing. Leaving the house had been instinctual, a way to escape the suffocating weight of Amanda's betrayal. But now that I was here, I realized I couldn't keep running. I needed to act to regain control. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Pulling it out, I saw an unfamiliar number. I answered, already suspecting who it might be. "Jack," came the voice on the other end. "Travis." "Bold of you to call," I said, my voice sharp and steady. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry," he said, though there was no sincerity in his tone. "I didn't mean for things to get out of hand." I laughed bitterly. "Out of hand? You slept with my wife, Travis. Repeatedly. And now you're calling me for what? Forgiveness." There was a pause on the line, and I could almost hear him struggling to find the right words. "Look, man, I don't want any trouble. This whole thing. It's over, all right? Amanda and I, we're done." "Done?" I asked, my voice icy. "You think this is over because you've decided to walk away? That's not how this works. What do you want from me?" he snapped, his bravado cracking. "I want you to understand what it feels like to lose everything," I said calmly. "And I want you to know that this is just the beginning." Before he could respond, I hung up. I sat there for a while, letting the silence settle around me. The call had confirmed what I already knew. Travis was a coward, a man who thrived on manipulation and control but crumbled when the tables were turned. When I got back home, Amanda was still sitting in the kitchen, her face pale and drawn. She looked up as I walked in, her eyes pleading. "Jack," she started, but I held up a hand to silence her. "I'm done talking," I said. "You've made your choices, and now I'm making mine." Her face crumpled, but I didn't care. I walked past her and into my office, locking the door behind me. Sitting at my desk, I opened my laptop and began putting the next part of my plan into motion. First, I sent the footage of Amanda and Travis to my lawyer, along with the screenshots of their messages. This would be invaluable in the divorce proceedings. Next, I drafted an anonymous email to the local news station, attaching the evidence I'd gathered about Travis's shady business practices. Mismanaged funds, unpaid employees, unsafe equipment. It was all there, ready to be exposed. Finally, I logged onto social media and created a new account. I uploaded the video footage and tagged Travis's gym, knowing it would spread like wildfire. I didn't post any commentary, letting the evidence speak for itself. By the time I closed my laptop, it was nearly midnight. I leaned back in my chair, exhaustion washing over me. But it wasn't the kind of exhaustion that came from defeat. This was the calm before the storm, the quiet satisfaction of knowing that the wheels were in motion. The next morning, the fallout began. By morning, the storm had hit. My phone buzzed incessantly, messages and calls flooding in as the video spread across social media. Travis's gym was tagged in every comment, people demanding explanations and sharing their outrage. His empire, built on charm and deceit, was crumbling under the weight of his lies. Amanda saw it first. She was sitting at the kitchen table when her phone dinged with a notification. I watched as her face turned ghostly pale, her hand trembling as she scrolled through the comments. "What did you do, Jack?" she whispered, looking up at me with wide, terrified eyes. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. An hour later, Travis's name was trending locally. The gym's social media page was flooded with accusations, customers canceling memberships, and former employees airing dirty laundry. He was finished, and everyone knew it. Amanda tried to call him, but he didn't pick up. I could see the panic rising in her, the realization that she was sinking with him. "Jack, please," she said, following me into the living room. "This is getting out of hand. You've made your point. Just stop." I turned to her, my voice steady. "This isn't about making a point, Amanda. It's about consequences. Something you and Travis clearly didn't think about." She opened her mouth to argue but shut it again, realizing she had no ground to stand on. By noon, I received a call from my lawyer. The evidence I'd provided was airtight, enough to secure me a favorable divorce settlement. Amanda would get nothing. When I told her, she broke down completely. "You're ruining my life," she sobbed, but I felt no pity. "You ruined your own life," I said coldly. Outside, the world continued to unravel for Travis and Amanda. Inside, I felt a strange sense of peace. The betrayal had shattered me, but now, I was the one holding the pieces. The morning after the fallout, Travis finally called. His voice was strained, panic thick in every word. "Jack, we need to talk. I'll fix this. Just meet me." I agreed, but only to hear him beg. I met him at a rundown diner outside of town. When he saw me, he immediately started talking. "Look, I know this looks bad, okay? But I never wanted it to go this far," he said, his confidence nowhere to be found. I just stared at him. "You ruined everything, Travis. My marriage, my life. And for what? A quick fix to your ego." "I was weak," he admitted, his voice breaking. "I made a mistake. Too late for that." I stood, leaving him at the table, his head hung low in shame. The final chapter of this twisted saga was one of quiet solitude. Amanda left, taking only a few of her things, and I was left alone in the house that once felt like home. I spent the days after sorting through the wreckage: divorce papers, lost trust, a ruined future. The legal proceedings went smoothly, and soon, Amanda and Travis were nothing more than ghosts in my past. But something inside me had changed. The man I was before their betrayal, the trusting, hopeful husband, was gone. I had been forged into someone sharper, more calculating. A man who didn't let his heart lead his decisions anymore. I didn't feel satisfaction in the destruction I'd caused. I didn't feel relief, just empty. And so I walked on, knowing that the life I had once known was behind me. What came next? Only time would tell. But I wouldn't be the same man again. If you've watched this far, leave a comment about what you think of Jack's journey and what you would have done in his shoes. Don't forget to subscribe for more intense, real stories.